Hello YouTube, Mr. Miz here down at the tracks, and I'm contemplating a video that I saw the other day from a YouTuber named Monsieur, where he discussed the Electoral College and some of the problems that he has with it, and I just kind of wanted to react to it, and this is something I've thought about quite a bit myself for, reasons. So, what is the Electoral College and how does it work? Put simply, the Electoral College is the system by which the United States elects the president. We do not have a direct democracy for this. You don't vote directly for the president, even though you vote for the candidate's name. You're actually voting for an elector. The electors are the ones that actually vote for the president. Theirs is the vote that counts. Part of the reasoning behind this is that the founders wanted to ensure that all of the states had a say in the election of the president. They also were somewhat distrusting of democracy. If you read any of their works, this comes through loud and clear. So the way that the Electoral College is divided up is as follows. Every state gets a panel of electors equivalent to its congressional delegation. So 2 senatorial electors and then 1 elector for each member of the House of Representatives. So in order to win the presidency, you must get a simple majority of the electors. Now there's some problems with this system that have come up over time. Ironically enough, the one that most people tend to complain the most about is the one that concerns me personally the least. And that is that you can win the presidency while losing the overall popular vote. Now, this does not concern me because the presidential election is not, in fact, a single election. It's 50 simultaneously held elections at state level, with the winner of the most states that has a sufficient number of electors becoming the president. Again, the United States is a unique system. The states are not just administrative subdivisions of the federal government. They're meant to be sovereign entities that, within the bounds laid out by the Constitution, are free to act in their own interest and as they see fit. Another major problem that I see with the Electoral College is that we're disproportionately represented. Back in 1929, Congress passed the Reapportionment Act of 1929. And what this did was to cap the number of representatives to the House of Representatives at 435. This has subsequently been increased to 438. So it was increased when Alaska and Hawaii became states, and I think, but I'm not certain, I'd have to check, but I think that it was increased as well to accommodate Washington, D.C. I think they get 3 electors. But regardless, in that time, over nearly 100 years ago, the population of the United States has increased from a little over 106 million to something like 320 million. And also as a result of this, the number of constituents per representative has grown from 210,000 roughly back in 1929 to about 761,000 today. Now, what Monsieur Z thought of as a solution to this was something that he calls Utahism. Essentially, you would completely redraw all the states, making sure that every state had at least 1 million people, and draw it based more upon bounds of geography and sort of cultural and economic factors. And while I do think that there would be some merit to this, I think the administrative burden would be a bit much. As it stands today, the electors are allocated as follows. So every state is guaranteed at least 1 representative. And so when the census occurs every 10 years, the state's representative delegations are modified. Each state gets one representative, and then the rest of the representatives are allocated proportional to a state's percentage of the overall population. And this is where the disproportion comes in. In order, to make this work, what you have happen is that the larger states, population-wise, states like California, New York, Texas, Florida, are actually underrepresented because the ratios of constituents to electors there are higher than in the smaller population, more rural states. So this is problematic to me because, more people live in cities, for better or ill. More wealth is concentrated in the cities, and the cities tend to get sort of disproportionately underrepresented. The flip side of this, and what many people have proposed, is either to abolish the Electoral College entirely or to do the National Popular Vote Compact, wherein if enough states were to agree to it, their electors would automatically go to the candidate that wins the national popular vote, even if that person actually lost in that state. I don't think this is a particularly good idea either, because essentially you're giving basically the 20 largest cities in the country the ability to control, essentially in perpetuity, not only one of the actual legal branches of the government, which is the executive branch, but also through that, the de facto fourth branch, which is the executive agencies. All that alphabet soup of administrative agencies that regulate and run so much of the country. So I have, in my mind, I think a somewhat easier way of doing this. And it's a two-pronged approach. Firstly, I would institute some version of what is known as the Wyoming Rule. Now, if you're not familiar, the state of Wyoming, the entire state, has one representative on a population of about 550,000 people. By population, it is the smallest congressional district in the country. So what the Wyoming Rule proposes to do is to remove the cap on the number of representatives in the House and use the state of Wyoming, as it is the smallest congressional district, as a divisor. So basically what you would do is, at the next census, you would tabulate the population of each state, and then you would divide that population by about 550,000, which is the population of Wyoming, and then representatives would be divvied up in that fashion. Now, a lot of the larger states, like California, again, Florida, Texas, would get more representatives out of this, which, of course, some Republicans would probably not be too thrilled by. Another way to do this, maybe, rather than using the state of Wyoming, would go back to, say, 210,000 people, which was the division of constituents per representative back in 1929 when the Reapportionment Act was passed. Some form of this, I think, would be more fair. There's no way, really, that one person can do a really good job of representing over 750,000 people. I just don't view it as very practical. But again, the problem is that, probably Republicans are going to balk at this a bit. So my second prong would be a little more difficult to accomplish. The first one, of imposing some form of the Wyoming Rule, would be a simple change to federal law. This next part would require a constitutional amendment. And that would be an amendment to the Constitution to mandate proportional division in some form or another of a state's electors. Early on, this was pretty much the way it was done. the electors were almost free agents, and they voted accordingly. We didn't have the type of partisanship that we have today. As time went on, I believe some of the smaller states began to change their laws to allocate their electors on a winner-take-all basis so as to try and make their state more important and therefore, bring it more attention to presidential candidates and, the president when he was elected. I think the problem with this is it doesn't really necessarily well reflect the demographics and the attitudes of a lot of states. If you're a staunch Republican in California or Illinois, you have almost no reason to go and vote because your state's going Democrat no matter what you do. Why even vote? In a similar fashion, if you're a staunch liberal Democrat living in a state like South Dakota, again, you probably really have no motivation to vote because that state's going Republican. It's just how it works. Now, how to allocate proportionally is, I think, up for debate. My proposal would be this. Number one, the senatorial electors, I would say, should go to the winner of the overall state popular vote. I do believe that there should be incentive and reward for winning the overall popular vote of any given state. From there, the next phase, I would say that the representative electors should be divvied up on the basis of either whoever won the popular vote of each respective congressional district within that state, or maybe proportionally based upon who won the overall state vote and what that proportion was, and with rounding to be given to the winner of the popular vote. I generally prefer the congressional district vote because I think it would be more representative of the state and the people in it. I think the problem is you'd have so many states where, deep blue states or deep red states, or they'd simply gerrymander it to make sure that you would get the most districts that would be most favorable to their party. So a proportional distribution based on the overall popular vote would probably, ease that worry, even though it would not be my preference. Unfortunately, even what I would view as a more modest sort of approach to this thing than Monsieur Z takes is probably simply not going to work. Our partisanship is reflective of essentially a deeply divided country. We have two sort of overall viewpoints that you could sort of broadly characterize as liberal or conservative, sort of proxied by the Republicans and the Democrats, who hold views of the good, by which I mean like who we are as a country, what our history means, who we are today, and what we should become or strive to become in the future, that are not just different, but that in so many ways are completely antithetical to one another. I'd like to think that, we're a wise enough people that we could find a solution to this problem, but to be honest, it seems to become more and more entrenched with each passing day. To the point that I think there's a lot of people on both sides that frankly don't view the other side as even being an American, or at least a real American. And I'm not going to sit here and say that, that thought has never occurred to me either, because it has. And that's a damn shame. But that's my modest proposal for how to solve the issue, or at least try to address the issue of the Electoral College. I hope you found this informative and enjoyable. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you could give it a like, subscribe to my channel, and share and comment. Especially comment. I'd love to hear what people might think of this. Mr. Miz out. Have a great day. Thank you.